So often we meet someone, say whether it's within customer service or an environment that's just on the street, we're talking to a stranger, we often ask, how are you? This is very much just scripted speech or automatic speech, if you will. It's just something we say, we don't really think about it. It's just sort of an icebreaker, which I can appreciate. So it's not that I dislike this question or that I think it's a bad one. Quite the contrary. I believe it's actually an immensely valuable question and just maybe shouldn't be used so lightly. Obviously, context matters, but I still feel that it devalues the word or the phrase itself of asking someone how they are. I think alternatively, it would be better to just open with something like hey or nice to see you, something that's a little bit more sincere and I think truthful. Because my issue with the question is that 99% of the time it's answered in a very passive and almost dismissive manner. It's just this weird little back and forth exchange that again just feels very scripted and just disingenuous in my opinion. And I feel that every time I'm asked this question and I just say alright or I'm good thanks, it's just not true. Again, I know it's often just an icebreaker, but I think it's a little bit of a slap in the face to us when maybe we aren't in the best mood or there is something that's up, but you're being asked how are you? And again, at least maybe not for everyone, but I think some people, maybe myself included at times, feel a bit of a sting when, you know, something is up or we're not all right and you don't really want to respond in a negative manner because again it's just expected that you say I'm good thanks or I'm all right or something to that extent. Now of course you could answer this question truthfully and be open and no one's stopping you from doing that, and if anything it's somewhat warranted since they are asking how are you. But my point is that it's never meant in that way. And again, it's disingenuous in my opinion. And ironically, it would actually be unfair to then answer in a truthful manner and to say emotionally unload onto someone who isn't actually asking for that or expecting that. I suppose I'm just emphasizing the fact that I dislike the disingenuous nature of that question being used the way we so often use it. Now I am biased because I am half Swedish, I've lived in the Netherlands, I've lived in Europe and countries where the culture is a lot more blunt, and often if you do ask a question like that, someone will give you a more genuine response, and again in a more blunt manner. But I think often, especially here in the UK where I'm currently living, and maybe even the US and other countries, Western countries, that question it's just thrown around a lot. And again, it's just as a means of opening conversation, but I just think it would be more genuine and authentic to open with something like hey or nice to see you. Maybe it's not nice to see them, but just something a little lighter than I think how are you. Because again, I know this probably isn't the case for everyone, but just for myself, every time I'm asked that question, I just can't help that I'm sort of deceiving the person or lying in some way, because I'm often not always just all right. And whichever end of the spectrum that I am, whether it's, you know, good or bad, happy or sad, there's just so much depth to that question. So it just gets me a little bit every time being asked how are you and then not answering in a truthful manner. Now I know I'm totally making a big deal out of something that isn't, but maybe it is, just to some level. And all I really want to do with this is just to express some thoughts regarding the nature of this greeting, because I can't help but always feel somewhat conflicted when I'm asked this, and I never want to make a big deal out of it, and I don't in the moment. You know, I just reciprocate like most people would, and I will most likely ask the question back, how are you? But I can't help but always just feel this sort of pointlessness to asking that, just because it would be easier and more genuine again to just say hey or it's good to see you or hope you've been well, something to that nature, where I think it's a bit more of a firm acknowledgement, because that's really what we're trying to do, is just acknowledge the other person. And I think again, if you're asking how they are, everyone's going through something. I just think it's more fruitful to actually try and elicit a more genuine response than a disingenuine one. Again, it's often untruthful. No one's really just all right. Again, whether they're on the good or the more bad side of the spectrum, depends how their day's going, and that's actually the other thing as well, is it's a very complicated question. Now I know I'm being very analytical of this phrase, but again, I think for the sake of understanding the depth behind it, and just to then throw it as a way of greeting someone, it just feels somewhat unnecessary to me. So I feel like it would be better to just normalize a more simple way of acknowledging someone than asking how they are. Again, I know this is just making a big deal out of something that isn't, but all I really want to do is just try spark some thought and maybe see what others feel or think about this, because it's just something that always kind of has me cringing a tiny bit on the inside, if I'm honest. When I'm asked this, of course I just reciprocate. I understand the intention is not to be insulting or to brush off one's actual feelings, but there is that element of that. So it's just made me think a little bit about that. Now again, I doubt this gesture or greeting is going to change, especially here in the UK, but I just thought I'd try spark some thought and consideration, and to maybe just make others a bit more conscious of this social exchange, because perhaps we could sort of revive the true value and meaning behind this question. Yeah, I don't know what I'm really trying to achieve with this. I just wanted to spark some thought, because who knows, maybe if we become a little bit more conscious of this sort of little social exchange, we could sort of revive the value that this question actually holds. Again, it's actually a very personal question, I think, and should be used more rightfully so. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know if this resonates with you. When you're asked this question, do you just answer and sort of go along with it? Are you that used to it? Because maybe I'm just not as used to it, because I haven't always lived in this sort of culture that does this all the time to greet someone. So maybe I still just need to adapt. But just some of my thoughts, maybe they resonate, maybe they don't. You can let me know below, and if you want to see more videos, you can always just subscribe. So until then, cheers.